Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Like a ball of poop being rolled by a dung beetle, the longer something journeys through life, the more dirt and grit it picks up. How many miles has that ball of poo traveled, I wonder? How do we judge such a thing if we haven't seen its beginning? Do we look at its size, its girth, or the quality of items it's accumulated during its poopy travels? Unfortunately, most things aren't like a ball of poop. Most things don't have all their accomplishments and experiences readily displayed on their surface for everyone to see. A lightsaber, for instance, hides its lifetime of experiences within a cold metallic cylinder, away from peering eyes. I've always wondered what life was like for Anakin's lightsaber. It was present at many climactic moments in Star Wars history. I wonder what kind of story it could tell us. As I watched Kylo and Rey suspend that lightsaber in the space between them and slowly rip it apart, revealing a bright, brilliant light, I really wanted to know what that release of energy was. Did it hold all of the secrets of its past? Was it the soul of the lightsaber rejoining the Force? Do kyber crystals even have souls? And if they do, how messed up is the one that Anakin owned? 22 years before the Battle of Yavin, Anakin Skywalker lost his first lightsaber during his duel with Count Dooku. Shortly after that, during the same duel, he lost his arm. For most people, losing an arm would be a big deal, perhaps lead to some self-examination that was long overdue, or temper and refine one's excitable nature. But with advanced robotic prosthetics being available to all the members of the Jedi Order, if anything, losing an arm was an upgrade for Anakin. And with the newly upgraded arm, Anakin also created a newly upgraded lightsaber. This time blue instead of green, like his master Obi-Wan Kenobi's. This new blade was specifically designed for the fifth form of lightsaber combat. Its rigid design made it perfect for the kind of heavy strikes and defensive parries that the young Jedi preferred. The lightsaber first saw action during the opening battles of the Clone Wars at Christophsis, and later during the vertical assault on Teth. Anakin's lightsaber popped its kill cherry on droids, but as the war went on, Anakin also started killing more people and organics like traitorous Tal Merrick. Unlike most Jedi, Anakin could appreciate a good old-fashioned massacre or a bit of decapitation as long as he could justify it. But as a Force-sensitive object, the lightsaber wasn't just a tool, it was more like a living partner. When Anakin sliced through a B-1 battle droid, the lightsaber was the one who was thrust inside the metallic innards of his enemy. The same thing happened when Anakin stuck his lightsaber into living beings, because it was Force sensitive and physically connected to these individuals as they died. In many ways, they were the last ones to see these individuals' last dying thoughts. And in one way or another, this lightsaber would go on to carry pieces of its victims for the rest of its existence, like little pieces of debris stuck on that ball of poop that we talked about earlier. These memories would go on to define the lightsaber. Unlike many Jedi, Anakin was a bit careless with his weapon and sometimes parted with it, allowing others to occasionally wield it as well, with varied results. But a reoccurring enemy that always seemed to trouble Anakin was Count Dooku, who constantly seemed to outsmart the younger Jedi. But Anakin's story is one of persistence and tribulation and overcoming the restraints that the Jedi Order placed on him. Eventually, he succeeded in chasing down his foe, who ironically was his only other competition in the eyes of his eventual master Darth Sidious. The two face off in another final duel, and Anakin disarms the elderly Sith Lord and hands him his greatest defeat, shortening his rule. It then goes on to behead the Separatist Alliance by beheading him, cutting short the Grand Sith plan. Or so he thought. By committing this extrajudicial killing, Anakin brought his lightsaber along with him towards the path of darkness. Anakin sealed his fate by dismembering the Jedi Order's attempt to dismember Palpatine by dismembering Mace Windu's arm from his body. This would lead to his servitude under Palpatine. As Darth Vader, Anakin kept his blue lightsaber for a time to hide his secret allegiance to the Sith. As a Jedi, Anakin liked to excel at everything he did. He oftentimes went to pretty extreme lengths to show off his ability. He carried over that same enthusiasm to his new job as a Sith Lord with a very impressive feat of pure evil and malice by slaughtering several Jedi younglings and killing several of his former Jedi friends. If you thought his lightsaber was morally confused after killing Count Dooku, well, now it was literally dripping with the blood of innocent children and friendly librarians. It's a wonder the lightsaber just didn't corrupt itself and turn red right then and there. Anakin would go on to murder more individuals on Mustafar by taking out the entire Separatist High Command. Before Anakin was able to leave, he dueled Obi-Wan Kenobi in an epic battle over the lava pits of Mustafar, where the rest of his limbs were chopped off. The lightsaber would finally be taken away from the murderous Sith Lord. In exile on Tatooine with Obi-Wan Kenobi, the lightsaber would spend most of his time in a trunk full of old gadgets and other memorabilia the old Jedi had kept. We're not really sure what the lightsaber did during this time, but most likely it just rested, It's probably tired of the non-stop combat it was involved in for the last several years. Perhaps it grieved all the lives it had ended, or perhaps it missed its master and cursed its turn to the dark side. But then, on one fateful day, Obi-Wan introduced Anakin's lightsaber to his son, Luke Skywalker. And thus began the lightsaber's second chapter in life, and many more dismemberments. We're not done yet. The lightsaber helped train Luke in the ancient art of Jedi combat, and slowly but surely, Luke began depending on his lightsaber more and more. After destroying the Death Star, Luke carried a daring raid on the Imperial production facilities on Cymoon. It was here that Luke and Darth Vader met face to face for the first time. Vader easily disarms the young Jedi and retakes his lightsaber back from the amateur. But luckily, Han Solo comes crashing through the roof with an AT-AT, creating chaos and saving Luke from dismemberment. Vader sends the lightsaber flying around, going through people randomly, forcing the lightsaber to once again commit mass murder. Luckily, Han returns and manages to disable Vader with an AT-AT. And once again, the lightsaber returns to Luke. The young Jedi tries his best to continue improving his clearly inadequate Jedi and lightsaber skills. Luke decides to return to Tatooine to rummage through Obi-Wan Kenobi's belongings. Along the way, he runs into a few Tuskens and naturally tries to kill them all. The Skywalker family has a very complicated relationship with the Sand People. And shortly after, Luke gets jumped by Boba Fett and manages to hold his own for a bit longer than he did against Vader, but eventually the bounty hunter gains the upper hand until a box that once belonged to Obi-Wan Kenobi awakens magically and slams into the side of Boba Fett's head. See, being dead has its advantages. By the time the Battle of Hoth came around, well, Luke still kinda sucked at fighting. He gets knocked out by a giant walking IKEA rug and barely manages to get out of that tricky situation by using some telekinesis and more dismemberment. After escaping Hoth, Luke finally gets some real guidance from Yoda on Dagobah, and by the time he fights Darth Vader once again, he's definitely gotten a lot better. It's still like a Jamaican bobsled kind of situation where you're rooting for them, but you're betting against them. Luke loses his hand in the lightsaber, which by now is probably the lightsaber's least favorite way of being detached from its owner, and the lightsaber drops down one of the many shafts in Cloud City and is recovered by some scavenger. Now, we did a really crazy theory before The Last Jedi came out about how those scavengers are actually Rey's parents, and that was kind of confirmed by the movie, sort of. I don't know if Kylo is lying or not, but you can check out that video in the corner here. Anyway, the lightsaber gets moved around until it ends up in the hands of Maz Kanata. It's placed inside her castle where Rey is called towards it when she visits. By this point, the lightsaber is probably tired of being misused by impulsive Skywalkers, and it's probably thinking, hey, maybe this new chick, who totally isn't a Skywalker, will take better care of me. But no, Rey rejects the lightsaber, which in her defense is because the lightsaber kind of rapes her mind? We can probably all agree by this point that this lightsaber does not have a good sense of right and wrong after killing so many innocent children, right? Finn, however, is not Force sensitive and picks it up and really does try his best to murder some of his former best friends who were basically the only family he ever knew. But once again, we find Anakin's lightsaber in the hands of an incompetent fighter. To Finn's credit, he doesn't give up there and tries to take on Kylo Ren with the lightsaber and even manages to strike the moody teenager who understandably is having some daddy issues after killing his dad. Despite his bravery, Finn quickly gets taken out by Kylo, and Rey finally accepts the lightsaber for herself and manages to cut up Kylo Ren pretty bad. But if you're gonna get cut up by a lightsaber, you might as well get a cool scar from it, and the scar that Rey gives Kylo is the coolest looking kind you can have. So that's kind of a positive thing. Yay! Anyway, Rey continues on her journey to find Luke and tries to give the lightsaber back to its former owner, who just randomly throws it off a cliff, which is just mean. I mean, this thing has feelings, and it's a highly sensitive weapon that uses carefully adjusted mirrors and crystals to create a plasma sword, which, if aligned the wrong way, could probably kill its owner. So yeah, good job, Luke. Anyway, some porgs almost commit ritual Benihana on the lightsaber. Unfortunately, Rey picks it up before that happens. She continues to train for a bit and gets more proficient with the lightsaber, kills a rock, which almost kills a few of the natives, and eventually leaves the island, realizing that Luke wasn't going to teach her much. Rey eventually ends up in the lair of Snoke. Her lightsaber is taken away from her, and she proceeds to have a very intimate conversation with the Supreme Leader. Taking advantage of this distraction, Kylo uses his grandfather's weapon to kill his own master by cutting him in half. Rey recovers the lightsaber, manages to proficiently fight off a few scary red guys, but upon realizing that Kylo wants her to join him on the dark side of the Force, decides to go into a tug-of-war with Solo's son, which results in the destruction of the lightsaber. But if you think about it, it's really not a terrible way for a lightsaber to die. I mean, had it survived, it probably would have experienced a lot more terrible things, been forced to go inside a lot more terrible people. So, in a way, it was like a mercy kill. Anakin's second lightsaber is the poop ball equivalent of a ball of poop that has been rolled through the men's room of a gas station that's never been cleaned. It has more baggage than a critically acclaimed Kevin Spacey movie. Anakin's lightsaber has gravitated itself towards some of the most heinous and terrible moments of Star Wars, and yet we as an audience forget that because it's simply an inanimate object. But who says we can't have feelings for an inanimate object? Just look at this Peruvian Willy Wonka, who married a tree several times. So guys, remember, the next time you stick your lightsaber into someone, it can be a very intimate moment for all parties involved. And it's usually a good decision to sit down with everyone beforehand and discuss what's going to happen before actually doing it. Wow. Totally didn't expect this video to go in that direction. Well, guys, don't forget to subscribe and like us on Facebook. A special thanks to all you Patreon supporters out there. Remember, if you're going to run around and stick your lightsaber into strangers, don't forget to wash it in between duels. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.